Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Iran. What is happening in Iran? Let's look at their youth and their leadership. Two great indicators of what's happening in any society. First, Iranian youth. Iranian youth works very hard to break through their government's block on the internet. The government has shut down almost all forms of contact and any access to the West through the internet, the World Wide Web, or AKA the WWW. The Iranian web is a cheap facsimile of the WWW. Iranians who want to jump on the West's WWW have gone to great lengths. They spend hours attempting to bypass governmental blocks. The youth use VPNs, or virtual personal networks. A VPN is artificially making it appear as if the user were located somewhere else. Here's how. Let's say you live in Tehran. When you go online, you click onto a VPN, and it shows that you are now in Los Angeles. The Iranian can now surf the net, and no one will know. The bigger problem is that the VPNs are overloaded by the Iranians. So many people want to get on it that it can take an hour before you even get on, and that many users actually causes the server to be slow, and the users usually get bumped off on a regular basis. Iranian leadership does not have the same restrictions. Iran's president and foreign minister tweet constantly. Even the supreme leader, or at least the supreme leader's office, tweets regularly. Iranians use the internet because they want to learn about what's happening in the West. That's a good sign. Now, the leadership side. Iran is petrified of what Israel's new stealth F-35 is doing. Israel has already flown the planes over Iran. A Kuwaiti newspaper reported about it. According to an informed source quoted by the newspaper Al Jarida, the fighters, and I'm quoting here, the fighters crossed Syrian airspace into Iraqi airspace, including to Iran, where they carried out reconnaissance missions and targets in the areas of Bandar Abbas, Isfahan, and Shiraz, flying at a high altitude over other sites suspected of a relationship with Iran's nuclear program. Iran did not detect the F-35s, neither did the Russians. The F-35 is a secret weapon. This worries Iran, but it is not their only worry. Israel's character worries Iranian leaderships even more than the weapon itself. The Israeli military is bold and tends toward quick, decisive action. That, combined with the F-35, is a real threat to Iran. Iran needs to know that Israel can and will strike Iran if necessary, and Iran knows that. Add to that the recent report by the London-based newspaper Ashaq al-Awsat said that on July 19th, Israeli warplanes bombed targets in both Iraq and Syria. The paper cites Western sources saying that the attack on Iraq targeted the base of an Iranian-linked paramilitary group in the northern Salahuddin province. Iranian leadership is rightfully concerned. This is an idea I talked about last week. I touched on it, but it's important and it needs much more development. So let's begin by giving you a little background of what I said last week. To jog your memory, the Foreign Ministry of Israel hosted a group of bloggers from Arab and Muslim countries. 6 bloggers came on the trip. One of them was Mohammed Saud from Saudi Arabia. Saud is a very popular blogger and is also fluent in Hebrew. Like any good Muslim, Saud wanted to visit the Dome of the Rock, so he dressed in the traditional Saudi religious garb and ascended the mount. And, as I said last week, local Arabs in Jerusalem's Muslim quarter were not pleased. Some people threw chairs at him. The video shows that Saud walked through the main Palladium of the Dome of the Rock, approaching the enormous shrine, the Dome of the Rock. One youngster ran up to him, grabbed his arm, and spit in his face. Saud was not fazed. The entire episode seemed surreal, certainly puzzling. How did these kids know who Saud was and when he would arrive there? How did people recognize him as he was, like so many others simply walking along the path? And how did they know why he was in Israel? It all stems from the depth of Palestinian hatred for anyone and anything, even minimally involved with Israel. Hurled chairs and spitting youths was not part of the Foreign Ministry's objective in bringing bloggers to Israel. Until these incidents against Saud occurred, the ministry had not leaked the news of the visit. for the safety of the attendees. In order to avoid these very incidents like these, the media knew nothing about the bloggers. And yet, people on the street knew whom to expect and were prepared and ready to yank that welcome out from under his feet. News of Saud's visit and his unwelcome welcome reached as high as the office of the Prime Minister. And the next day, the day after Saud visited the Dome of the Rock, the blogger guests of Israel's Foreign Ministry met with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in his office. During their meeting, the Prime Minister spoke and told the guests, actually, Israel is keeping the region safer. And this is what Netanyahu said. But within the region, Israel is an irreplaceable power, because there is no other power in the region that without its presence and activity here, I would say the region would collapse. Without Israel, without the things we do, the things we stand for, and the things we protect, I think the entire Middle East would collapse by the forces of Islamic radicalism, whether Shiites led by Iran or Sunni radicalism led by the Islamic State, unquote. The Prime Minister also said, and here's a quote again, Israel is the one indigenous force in the Middle East that prevents the collapse of the Middle East. Prime Minister Netanyahu is correct. Israel keeps the lid on so many regional issues. Without Israel, Islamic extremism would have taken over many swaths of the Middle East itself, and from there, the world. For years, even decades, conventional wisdom in the region was that Israel is a flashpoint. Experts theorized that Israel's presence in the region was explosive and that Israel was responsible for many of the problems that plague the region. But that is simply not true. And the leaders of the Arabic world know that now. They know that solving the Palestinian-Israeli issues will not solve the root problems in the Arab world. They know that the Israeli-Palestinian problem is only a small blip on the spectrum of problems they face. The Israeli Prime Minister takes it even one step further. Netanyahu maintains that Israel's battles against Muslim terror and against Iran have kept those forces in check. Recently, the head of Israel's clandestine services, the Mossad, acknowledged that Israel has prevented at least 50 attacks outside of Israel. 12 of those planned attacks were in Turkey. Most of the others were scattered throughout the Arab world. Arab leadership knows that Israel is helping keep them safe. These countries may not have diplomatic relations with Israel, but they are now deeply reliant on receiving Israel's intel about Iran and Islamic terror. Gleaning the benefits of Israel's cutting-edge technology and high tech is a bonus Israel oftentimes throws their way. The Arab world at large has shifted their unconditional support away from the Palestinians. They have much more to gain from quiet and oftentimes secret interactions with Israel than they do trying to control, contain, and convince the Palestinians to tone down their animus and join their ranks. Palestinians stand alone. They can't even welcome another Muslim Arab who wants nothing more than to pray and pay respects at one of the holiest of Islamic sites. Coming up next, Points of View. Here's what some important voices have been talking about. First up is a column from Ynet. It's written by Rabbi Avi Weiss from Riverdale, New York. It was published July 26, 2019. Rabbi Avi Weiss is the founding rabbi of the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale and a longtime activist for Jewish causes and human rights. As a young rabbi, he was a vocal and strong supporter and force behind the Soviet Jewry movement. He is a true modern-day hero. This column is entitled, "In Argentina, Jewish Life Still is Cheap." The subtitle headline is really more of a synopsis than a headline. It reads, 25 years after the bombing at the Amia Community Center that claimed 85 lives, Argentina still has diplomatic relations with Iran, which was behind the slaughter. And as Tehran has denied an extradition request for those implicated in the attack, Buenos Aires should break ties with Tehran until the perpetrators are brought to justice. This is how Avi Weiss begins. July 18th marked 25 years since the attack against the Amia Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires. It was the largest attack against the Jewish community in the diaspora since the Holocaust. 85 people were murdered, over 300 were injured. To date, the perpetrators have not been apprehended. Rabbi Weiss doesn't just sit at home and discuss these issues from his pulpit. He gets up and goes. And now he describes his trip to Argentina soon after the terror. The column continues. Soon after the devastation, I flew to Buenos Aires. The images of family members I met awaiting news about their loved ones will forever remain with me. Jonathan Averbach, a 12-year-old who collapsed in his father's arms when hearing that his sister Janina was gone. Damian Goldenberg, who demanded, "Where is God?" when told that his sister, Cynthia Veronica, had been found. From the beginning, I instinctively knew that then President of Argentina, Carlos Menem, was covering up. I came to this conclusion after meeting with him one-on-one and being present at a full cabinet meeting where Menem tried to convince me that the government was doing all it could to capture the terrorists who had bombed the Israeli embassy 2 years earlier. The cover-up by the Argentinian leaders and the Iranians was obvious. Now Weiss did what he does so very well. He went in search of justice. And he writes, "Let's get serious. With Iran having denied Argentina's request that Iranian officials implicated in the Amia attack be extradited, Argentina should break relations with Iran until the perpetrators are brought to justice. This is not the time to cozy up to the Argentine government, but rather, in the words of the Bible, declare the voice of the blood of our sisters and brothers cries out from the ground. Janina, Cynthia, Veronica, and all the others who were slaughtered deserve to be heard. Their cries and the cries of their family members cannot go unheeded, not only for their sake, but for the well-being of all of humankind. When terrorists are not apprehended, it sends a message to other terrorists that they can terrorize with impunity." Well said, very well said, Rabbi Weiss. Second up is a column from Israel Hayom. This newspaper is financed by Sheldon and Miri Adelson. It was originally created as a counterbalance to the extremely left-leaning media in Israel. The paper is distributed in Israel for free. From almost its first weeks of publication, Israel Hayom became the largest distributed and read newspaper in Israel. Its critics say that's because it's free. Others claim that it's so popular because it offers a different point of view. This piece was published on July 25th, 2019. It's authored by Ken Cohen. Ken Cohen is the editor of Facts and Logic About the Middle East, which has published educational messages to correct misconceptions about Israel and its relationship with the United States. The title of the column is "New PA Textbooks Are Worse Than the Old Ones." The subtitle, again more of a synopsis, "Those who doubt any imminent resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict need look no further than the new Palestinian school books to become even more pessimistic." This is how Cohen begins. There was great hope and anticipation several years ago when the Palestinian Authority announced that it was completely replacing its K-12 textbooks. But new editions merely confirm obsessive Palestinian hatred of Jews and rejection of peace with Israel. The older Palestinian textbooks were filled with ugly anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic propaganda. Shockingly, this pervasive spirit of distortion and hate wasn't only employed in history textbooks, but also dominated language, math, and even science lessons. The author, Cohen, then gives examples of the new textbooks. They will make your hair stand on end. Listen to what he writes. Over the past 3 years, the PA has released a full set of new textbooks, and they are even worse than the old ones in teaching Jew hatred, fictionalized history, and a profound glorification of martyrdom, terrorism, and hate. Though Western liberals continue to place the onus of peacemaking on Israel, these materials make it clear the Palestinians' dedication to waging war. Geography, of course, is taught without reference to Israel's borders, or even the state of Israel's existence. All of the maps and exercises are predicated on a state of Palestine with its borders extending from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea and from Lebanon to Egypt. Israel is completely obliterated throughout the textbooks. Although the Palestinian textbooks are rife with references to Zionist occupiers and Zionist Jews, the city of Haifa is treated as occupied territory, every bit as occupied as the disputed areas of Judea and Samaria, which fell under Israeli control in June of 1967. Cohen now concludes with the obvious, an ending of the conflict. He writes the following: "Those who doubt any imminent resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict need look no further than these Palestinian textbooks to become even more pessimistic about a new Palestinian generation leading the way, at long last, to a peaceful future for Arabs and Jews alike. These unfortunate children are being brainwashed by their elders to seek no compromise, but to continue on the suicidal path of terror, hate, and ignorance so well established by past generations of Palestinian Arabs and their leaders. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I want to discuss 4 cartoons today, 1 from Amsterdam, 2 from the United States, and 1 from Jordan. They all deal with Iran and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. The first cartoon is simply called Hormuz. It was drawn by Arend van Dam of Amsterdam. It was published on July 22, 2019. Oil tankers are pictured passing through the straits. On one side of the narrow strait, in a nod to the sculptures of Mount Rushmore, are faces of Iranian leadership. On the other are faces of Donald Trump and Arab leadership. The next cartoon was drawn by Steve Sack, and it was published on July 25, 2019 in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. The cartoon is a map of the strait, and it's covered in a spider web. Caught in the web are the oil tankers. Hanging above the web is the Grand Ayatollah. The supreme leader is portrayed as a spider. Our third cartoon was drawn by Daryl Cagle. It was published on July 25, 2019. It was entitled Trump and Iran. Donald Trump is wearing his trusty signature red tie, and the Grand Ayatollah, aka the supreme leader, is tied up in the tie. This is a very unique play on what we call being tied up in red tape. The final cartoon is from Jordan. It is drawn by Osama Hajjaj, and it was published on July 28, 2019. It is called Iranian Tank Seizure. The cartoon is of a tanker in a bottle, like a ship in a bottle. But in this depiction, the cork on the bottle is the head of the Ayatollah. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. The president of Turkey is once again lashing out against Israel. Erdogan never misses an opportunity to attack Israel. This time he went out of his way to attack Israel without any reason or provocation. At a meeting with provincial officials, as reported on Press TV in Turkey, Erdogan went on his rant. He said, quote, "Whoever is on the side of Israel, let everyone know that we are against them. We do not approve of silence on the state terror that Israel blatantly carries out in Palestine," unquote. This is more than a policy dispute. This is Erdogan drawing up teams and threatening discipline for those who break ranks with him. While many barriers have been broken down between Israel and other countries over the past 2 years, Turkey wants to turn the clock back. Iranian oil exports dropped in July to as low as 100,000 barrels per day due to the sanctions and rising tension with the United States and Britain. According to an industry source, the tanker data, this drop is deepening global supply losses. As important as sanctions are, that is not good news. Israel Space Communication Limited plans a satellite launch, which it hopes will mark a rebound from a couple of major setbacks in recent years. The Amos 17, which will provide communication services to Africa, had a total budget, including manufacturing and insurance and launch, of about $250 million, and will join 3 other Spacecom satellites that the company now operates. Other than the United States, all parties to the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran want to safeguard the accord, and they strongly oppose Washington's decision to unilaterally reimpose sanctions on Tehran. The remaining parties to the deal, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China, and the EU, and Iran, of course, met for emergency talks in Vienna that were called in response to an escalation of tensions between Iran and the West, principally the United States. In the past month alone, that escalation included confrontations at sea and Tehran's breaches of the accord. After the meeting in Vienna, Fu Kang, Director General of the Department of Arms Control in China's Foreign Ministry, told journalists this, and this is important: all sides have expressed their commitment to safeguard the JCPOA, that by the way is the agreement, and continue to implement the JCPOA in a balanced manner. The Israeli Security Cabinet unanimously approved Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to build 700 housing units for Palestinians living in the West Bank, in Area C. Area C is an area totally controlled by Israel. Germany's foreign ministry says that it has instituted new social media guidelines and disciplined personnel for anti-Israel tweets that were liked by the official Twitter account of the German mission in the Palestinian territories in Ramallah. The German Foreign Ministry said that 10 people had access to the account, which is called @JerRep Ramallah, the account, and it wasn't clear who clicked on the likes. The ministry admitted that the account was not secured against unauthorized users. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. It's confusing. Some people call it the Strait of Hormuz, singular. Others call it the Straits of Hormuz, plural. The singular Strait of Hormuz is correct. The body of water we are talking about can only be called the Straits of Hormuz when it's written with an apostrophe, that is S-T-R-A-I-T apostrophe S, that is belonging to Hormuz. My preference is to call it the Strait of Hormuz. 33% of the world's LNG, that's liquid natural gas, travel through it. 20 to 30% of the world's oil passes through it. We're talking every single day through the Strait of Hormuz. The strait links the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, also known as aka the Sea of Oman, and from there it flows out into the Indian Ocean. It is a perfect choke. The word strait actually means narrow passage that connects two bodies of water. So it is very aptly named. The southern side of the strait is where Iran has its land, its body. The northern side belongs to Oman. It is a very, very narrow passage. It touches the coasts also of the United Arab Emirates ever so slightly, and Muzandam, which is an exclave, a set of islands belonging to Oman. An exclave is a portion of territory that belongs to one state or country, but is surrounded by another state or country, or a body of land or water. The strait is about 90 nautical miles long, with a width varying from 52 nautical miles to 21 nautical miles at its narrowest. But large ships are only able to navigate 6 miles of the width of the strait. 6 miles is almost nothing. There are 2 2-mile long lanes in one direction, and there's a 2-mile buffer separating the lanes, and then another 2-mile set of lanes, 2 lanes of 2 miles, going in the other direction. In Arabic, the strait is actually called Wadik Hormuz. In Farsi, which is Persian, it's called Tangi-ye Hormuz. Here now is the very tricky part. Because the strait, which is only 6 miles in width, is so narrow, it falls actually into the territorial waters of Oman and Iran. That is the entire strait. Both countries have expanded their territorial waters to include the entire straits themselves. Both have said that only innocent passage, which means non-military ships, may pass. They both require prior permission by military ships in order to pass. The United States has never accepted these declarations. When you look at a map, you see just how frighteningly simple it is to block the strait. Sinking a single ship in one lane would obstruct the strait for weeks and destroy the flow of oil to the world. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.